November 14 every year is tagged World Diabetes Day, primarily to create global awareness of diabetes mellitus, led by the International Diabetes Federation, IDF. Now, each World Diabetes Day focuses on a theme related to this condition. Now, over the years, the World Diabetes Day has focused on issues such as diabetes, human rights, diabetes, and the lifestyle, as well as obesity, as well as some other issues that have been taken from time to time. Well, for us this year, what are those things exactly that we still are not doing right, or that we should actually create more awareness for diabetes in children and adolescents? Now, the theme for the 2018-2019 World Diabetes Day is that of the family and diabetes. Now, a two-year time frame has been chosen to actually best align the World Diabetes Day campaign to the current International Diabetes Federation. Well, some of the strategic plan you'll get to find out maybe as you look out in the media. Now, here in Nigeria, diabetes is a growing concern. And the World Health Organization's most recent data on Nigeria estimates a prevalence of 4.3% in adults. That is 18. That is for 18 and older years, and that's between 1980 and 2014. Now, the program is Nigeria Today, and you will be seeing what we want to talk about: managing diabetes. What about preventing it in the first instance? My name is Blessing Abu. Welcome to the program. Let's join us on the program today to take a look at prevention and also managing diabetes. I would like to welcome Dr. Ogugwa Osi Ogu. She is a consultant physician at the National Hospital here in the nation's capital. Welcome to the program, Dr.
Thank you, Blessing.
Yes, for everyone that we might just assume we understand what diabetes is, and for those who will know what kinds of diabetes are there, what's predisposes one to actually get to that.
Right.
What exactly, let's try to put in perspective, what exactly are we contending with here when we say diabetes mellitus?
Thank you. So diabetes mellitus is a chronic metabolic condition that results from a deficiency or a complete lack of a hormone that we call insulin that is supposed to help us drive glucose from the blood into the tissues and cells where this glucose is used as a fuel. Okay. So what that then results in is that we have an excessive amount of blood glucose. Okay. So it's a chronic metabolic condition where there is a relative or a complete lack of insulin resulting in excessive blood glucose.
Okay. Now, what gets on to this? Because for everyone, it's okay if it's a particular thing I'm doing. Yes, I talked something about lifestyle,
right,
or what exactly gets people to actually have the kind of diabetes that is daring.
Right. So when we talk about diabetes, we have three main types, or two main types. We have type 1, which is where we have the complete lack of the insulin itself, because the pancreas, which is where the insulin is produced, has been damaged either from some autoimmune, what we call autoimmune reactions, or some viral infections. The pancreas gets damaged and does not produce insulin. So such people develop type 1 diabetes. That's a small percentage, about 5 to 10% of diabetes are the type 1. Okay. More cases of diabetes are the type 2, so about 90 to 95% are type 2.
Which is a spike in the blood sugar?
Yes. So in both cases, you have an excessive blood glucose level, both in type 1 and type 2. That is a common thing to both types. It's just the etiology, or the cause of it is different. In type 1, the pancreas, which is that organ in the body that should produce the insulin. So when we eat a meal, our blood glucose goes up. The insulin, the blood glucose, that same blood goes through to bathe your pancreas. The pancreas senses that the blood glucose has now gone higher than it should be, produces the insulin, secretes it into the blood. That insulin drives that excessive amount of glucose into the tissues, your brain, your muscles, where they are used as fuel. in the type 1, that capacity to produce the insulin from the pancreas is lost because the pancreas has been damaged. In type 2, it's a different mechanism. So in type 2, we say that there is an insulin resistance. So the insulin is there, but is not fitting into the receptors at the cell level to allow it go in.
So what
the insulin is almost like a key.
Okay,
that opens the door for the glucose to go from the blood into the tissues where it should be used. But in type 2, the insulin, that key is not fitting. So it doesn't open the door. And so the glucose doesn't move from the bloodstream into the cells.
So anything could make the key, now using your analogy, not to turn, and at least to allow.
What makes that key, what gives any individual that insulin resistant state are things like obesity, sedentary lifestyle, which also would result in the obesity. If you have a family history of diabetes, it also tends to be that the predisposing condition is that you have insulin resistance running within the family.
Okay, now our concern, of course, we're concerned about whatever the type here, but let's have the scale of what we have exactly in Nigeria, because I know different parts of the world are actually faced with different as well. That's what assumption could be, but what type do we have more in Nigeria, and where do we have such prevalence?
So it's a global thing, really, having more type 2 than type 1.
Okay.
But so we always used to think that type 1 we would see only in young people, much younger people, children. We'll typically see type 1 in people below the age of 21, 30. And type 2 we tend to see in those who are older, 30 and above. But with lifestyle change, we're finding adolescents, so 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, having type 2 because of this sedentary lifestyle, physical inactivity. So we have, teenagers who are sitting for hours playing the video games.
Surfing.
While they are there, there's soda on one side, and then there's the cookies, the biscuits, the popcorn. So increasing intake of calories and that physical inactivity all predispose to the development of type 2 in adolescents. So we're finding younger people developing type 2.
Do we as a nation recognize this potential of being, of course, what I'm talking about now, do we recognize this as a potential epidemic?
So diabetes, right, there's been a lot of noise about diabetes for quite a number of years now, because it's become a pandemic actually. It's a global problem. More than 400 million people worldwide are said to be suffering from diabetes, and we think even that number or more might have what we describe as pre-diabetes. You haven't quite developed diabetes, but your sugar values are not within normal, and you're at risk of developing diabetes if no intervention.
I know we might not have what it takes to actually do that measurement now.
Right.
So at what point, what's the scale 1 to 10, or how do you measure? How do you now know if you go?
So how do we get to that point? Actually, before I answer that, because your question was, are we as a nation looking at this? So it's not just Nigeria as a nation, but
definitely.
It's a global issue.
I use that because this is our own
because it's pandemic. But coming back home, so diabetes is one of the non-communicable diseases, and there is currently in the Ministry of Health a strategic plan looking at our NCDs in Nigeria.
What's
the
that?
Non-communicable diseases, diabetes being one of them, hypertension being the other. So as a nation, we're definitely looking at it strategically now to try and look at how we can curb this increasing problem of non-communicable diseases, even at the level of, I know there's a lot of plan that the Ministry of Health has involving other sectors, because NCDs, or even if we talk about diabetes specifically, is not just about the health of it, but the lifestyle. If people need to walk, have we provided an environment for them to be able to walk? Are there paved walkways? You know, I live in an estate and I want to actually take a walk, I want to jog. It must be safe for me to do that. So the Ministry of Environment needs to look into that. Works, you know, so it involves so many sectors for us to really get it right and reduce the burden of non-communicable diseases, diabetes being one of them. Now back to the question on numbers. So this is what we say: if you an older adult, I mean you're 30 years old and above, you're overweight or obese, and that brings me to the issue of body mass index, but and you're having symptoms such as excessive urination, you're losing weight and you can't figure it out. It's not because you're reducing your food, but you're just losing weight. And in fact, you're losing weight, but you're eating a lot. You have to then think, oh, could I be having diabetes? And what do we do when you come to the doctor? They're going to check your blood sugar. Just a simple blood test, a blood sample. We do it when you've had an overnight 8 to 10 hour fast.
Okay.
If you have a value above 7 millimoles per liter, that's concerning. So you have the symptoms and you now have this value above 7. That is very significant, and we'll be thinking that you might have diabetes. If it's not a fasting sample and we take a sample anytime in the course of the day, not minding when you ate and when you didn't eat, and is above 11, that's also concerning for diabetes.
So could there be other symptoms or perhaps none that is even not showing, and somehow you fall under such
right, so this is why we say everyone should know their numbers on a yearly basis, and I always recommend that, you know, it's your birthday, go in a week before your birthday to make sure that you get a clean bill of health from the doctor and you can celebrate your birthday without any encumbrances. So we all know when our birthdays are. Go out there and make sure on a yearly basis you do a health check. And what are those numbers? Your blood sugar level, your blood cholesterol level, your body mass index. So the doctor is going to check your weight in kilograms, divide that by your height in meters. Whatever value you get, you divide it again by that same height in meters. So it's your weight in kilograms by your height in meters squared, gives you your body mass index. And then I mentioned 4 numbers. So blood sugar, blood cholesterol, your BMI, blood pressure. Okay? So those 4 numbers. And you want to track them on a yearly basis. So from this year to the next year, you keep a record. Your blood pressure today is 120/70. The next year is jumped to 140/80. It might be sounding normal, but see the big jump. That's significant. And you now have to start looking at, oh, why is this? Did my weight go up? Am I eating more salt? And the same thing for your blood sugar. So if we all go on a yearly basis, get to know these numbers, you will be able to track. And when it looks like your numbers are getting out of the range, then you start intervening, and you should not be getting to that level where you're actually developing high blood sugar.
I'm glad you're able to tell us some of these areas of what's more like this, the preventive side.
Right.
Well, we're talking about the management stuff for those already found themselves on this other lane. And then let's also take a look at what the residents of FCT, at least we spoke to some earlier in the day to find out what they know about diabetes mellitus. You're watching Nigeria Today, and let's get to the streets and find out more from what we understand from this topic.
Diabetes is the inability of the insulin to convert excess sugar in our body. I checked my blood sugar level last year.
Diabetes, I never go for checkup. No, I work in construction, and most of the time we don't have time to do all those things. That until when we get time, we can go for checkup.
Some things that someone can eat that is not good for body, now make the result of diabetes. It's also the thing that killed my father. So all these local people where they work out for road, now I used to do.
A kind of ailment that when it affects one's, it drains them, look leaning, and You know, some people even may interpret them for AIDS or whatever, but they will look unhealthy really. And I don't know, maybe ideally people say that it's have to do with intake or so much of sugary things, stuff like.
Well, we have cases of diabetes in my family. Recently, I lost a cousin brother who died of diabetes, but I think I check what I eat. I'm very sure of myself, and I go for medical check often.
Thank you.
I checked my blood sugar level last month.
Well, voices from the street. I'm sure some of them, so in line with whatever you had already talked about. Let's look at the management for most people. Already said to be a very expensive condition to manage, and I'm sure no one wants to actually even get into that, but there you are with people already. So you made mention of some symptoms earlier. People could be losing weight without necessarily even or
making
not even
efforts.
making efforts, and eating more, unnecessary thirst or excessive thirst, and some other areas of concern.
Right.
How do you get to manage diabetes?
Right, so once we've made the diagnosis, we've established that this person has diabetes mellitus, first thing is education.
Okay.
This individual or this person must understand what diabetes is all about. That's key, it's critical, because management is dependent on how much discipline and commitment the individual has. So if they don't understand, then they won't be able to commit. So education, critical in the management of diabetes. So they need to understand what's going on, why it's going on, what they need to do in terms of diet, what they need to do in terms of physical activity. So education on lifestyle, really important. Education on the essence of, follow-up. So diabetes is not one of those conditions that we diagnose and you sit at home and manage yourself. I saw a 6-year-old woman today. The last time I saw her was 5 years ago. Ooh. And she'd been self-managing. Put herself on insulin and was just increasing doses of it. That should not happen. So we educate on the essence of follow-up, routine follow-up. You form a bond with your clinician when you have a chronic condition like diabetes, because it's lifetime commitment for you to do the right thing so that you do not suffer complications from the diabetes. So
what possible complications could come from diabetes if not well managed?
Very many. So diabetic is a multi-systemic condition. And the reason it's multi-systemic is because the effects of the high blood sugar are borne mainly by blood vessels. And we have blood vessels running the entire body. So starting from the head, you can get a stroke if diabetes is not well managed. People go blind. Yes, when diabetes is not well managed, because the blood vessels in the eyes get affected and blindness can result. People can develop heart attacks, heart failure, kidney failure, and we're needing to dialyze you. If you're lucky and you can afford it, you go and get a kidney transplant, but that's very expensive, not affordable to so many.
Now let's look, I know of course for so many already having such symptoms, I'm sure they've been following up. Now, what kind of diet would somebody who is diabetic actually be asked to follow?
So in the past we used to say, oh, don't eat this, don't eat this, don't eat that. They can eat everything. It's the quantity of intake from foods that are high in what we call glycemic index. So the foods that are starchy and simple sugars, we tell them to try and avoid. So your gari, yam
should be particular
smaller quantities, and more of your calories from vegetables and proteins. because the starchy foods are the ones that we tend to break down into glucose more than the other food types. So we want calories reduced, calorie source from carbohydrates reduced significantly, and then you take more vegetables and fruits. We also, diabetes, so this is the other thing about diabetes, it's not just about the blood sugar. When we are managing you with diabetes, we're also looking at other things, your blood pressure, your cholesterol level, because we know when those two are coexisting with diabetes, it increases multifold the risk for some of these complications that I had talked about, the stroke, the heart attack, the kidney failure. So we are also monitoring your blood pressure, make sure it's well controlled. We're monitoring your cholesterol level, make sure it's well controlled to reduce that risk of what we call cardiovascular complications from the diabetes.
All right, and let's take you back to at the beginning of the introduction. I talked about this year's theme, looking at the family and diabetes.
Right.
Now, how should family help in curbing or making people get to the stage that will not at least give us another scare for
I really love the theme because, you know, you have someone you've diagnosed with diabetes, maybe a 50-year-old woman, and she tells you, oh, I cook my own food and then I cook a different pot for the rest of the family. Because she's avoiding carbohydrate, maybe she's avoiding oils, she's, you know. This theme is telling us that the whole family should imbibe healthy living, meaning everybody should reduce calories from starchy food, from carbohydrates, so that we can optimize our BMI. Your BMI can be well maintained and you are not at risk of developing diabetes or hypertension. That way we'll have healthier families, healthier communities, healthier nations. We will be able to curb this pandemic. And hopefully in years to come we'll have, you know, a reduced prevalence of diabetes.
I know, of course, from time to time there could be aspects of peer review from the colleagues from other parts of the country. Now, what kind of conversation are you holding, at least to helping communities to actually at least create that awareness that you talked about earlier, more of advocacy at least, and how to reach out, especially from patients that they see from time to time?
So it's again back to the education. We just have to keep talking. Exercise, key. Physical activity is key. Everyone must move.
Keep moving.
Keep moving. Minimum 150 minutes of walking. So you don't really have to go and people say, well, I can't afford a gym. You don't need to do that. Just walk 30 minutes at least 5 times a week.
5 times?
At least. At least. We would prefer that you could do it daily, but at the minimum 5 times a week. The other way to do this is you're in the office, you need to go up to the 3rd or 5th floor or 7th floor.
So those who have high rise office
you know,
space.
Don't use the elevator. Just walk up the steps. Every chance you get, move. Women in the homes, don't just sit in the living room and have the women, you go and get me the water, you go and get me this. Let's, you know, every time you feel like sending someone on that errand, you remember, oh, I need to move. And then you get up and do it. So we must make exercise a way of life.
Yes, you also talked about the plan policy. How soon, or what are other efforts?
So I am
practitioners
aware.
like you.
So I'm aware that, are you talking of the national level?
Yes.
Right. I'm aware that I've been part of the NCD Technical Working Group on non-communicable disease, you know, that's been convened by the Federal Ministry of Health. The president at the National Assembly, the UN General Assembly, did talk about us having this strategic plan for NCDs, and that's going to be followed by a multi-ministerial meeting where this will be discussed. You know, it's not just health, it's nutrition, it's environment, it's, you know, so it's multiple sectors involved, and they all need to talk and agree on how to deal with this. It's a ban on tobacco that must be enforced, because smoking increases that risk for those complications from diabetes.
All right, thank you very much. Let's hope the conversation gets quickened amongst you practitioners and also all stakeholders.
Right.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ogugwa Osiobu, consultant physician, National Hospital here in Abuja. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it on this edition of Nigeria Today. But before we go, of course, we've already appreciated it. We want to appreciate you too for watching. Make sure you move. Keep moving. Watch your diet. And let's prevent this pandemic, as we have already discussed. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Nigeria Today will be back tomorrow, same time, 7:30 in the evening of school. You can actually watch this edition online or any other edition at all at youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. My name is Blessing Abo. Thank you for your time.